freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your Sunday recap for this week's Hero World Challenge, 2 events on the DP World Tour, a potential golf ball rollback, Tiger Woods back in action, college football playoffs, and anything else that might come along the way. Joining me to break it all down, Patrick McDonald is here. Patrick, hello.
What's going on, gang? You know, in the corporate world, this is typically the part on the calendar you look forward to between Thanksgiving and Christmas, the New Year's. Not a lot of work is getting done, but let me tell you, not this week for us.
Oh, we've got lots to cover. Greg DuCharme is here. Hello, Greg.
Yeah, you have Tiger Woods playing golf again, and it's not the biggest story. Usually, like Patrick said, this is a time of year where it's quiet. I mean, that golf event we watched at the Hero World Challenge, you got, sights of the boats, the big yachts. It's an easygoing week in the Bahamas. And behind the scenes, the game of golf, the world of golf is erupting, and sports in general. So crazy. I can honestly say, what a week.
What a week indeed. Kyle Porter is here. KP, good to see you.
I didn't even see that coming, Craig. That was perfect.
I just thought of it.
Rory's back on Twitter. We didn't even talk about that.
No.
There is I don't know if it's fun, but there's certainly a lot going on in golf to talk about. It's like the Darren Ravel tweet of I realize this is bad for our country, but it's tremendous content. Like, that's how I feel a little bit right now.
Very quickly on this college football playoff, because Twitter was melting down. I was on the golf course this morning. This guy I was playing with was melting down. I do not follow college football that closely, but from my understanding, there were kind of 2 paths you could go here. The committee could give you the 4 best teams or the 4 most deserving teams. However, I'm not sure we got either of those in this scenario. So someone explain to me how we got to Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama.
Kyle, take it.
Well, you're right in that if the committee was consistent about one thing in that they've always said, and it's a completely insane way to determine your champion, as I wrote on Twitter, but they've always said, like, we're just trying to determine the 4 best teams. And part of me has always been, I used to cover college football very closely. Part of me was always like, well, then why even play? Like, you already believe that Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and whoever are the 4 best teams. So, like, why are we even playing games? And they did, I think, pick what they believe are the 4 best teams, and they left Florida State, which went 13-0. They left them out because they don't believe they're one of the 4 best teams, which technically is probably right. But what an insane sport! I think golf's crazy. What an insane sport that you can win all your games and not make it to the postseason of your league, of your sport. Like, that's ludicrous. And to your point, Rick, and I'll let somebody else take over, Georgia is probably one of the 4 best teams. I think that's probably what you're getting at, right?
Well, right. So there's 2 things, right? I completely agree with. It's one thing if Boise State or whoever else wants to go undefeated and maybe they get in, maybe they don't. A Power 5 conference team goes undefeated, wins their championship, is not in. That is insane to me. The other thing is, if we are going to get the 4 best teams, you're telling me the team that just won 30 in a row and lost yesterday
by 3
is not one of the 4 best teams? How does Georgia go from 1 to 6?
Well, because they couldn't. The problem, the Georgia problem is they couldn't leave Texas out because Texas beat Alabama.
And so then Alabama beats Georgia.
Are you gonna take one of the 13-0 teams out? I mean, they already took 1 out. Are you gonna take 2 of them out?
Did Washington go 13-0? Is that the other?
Yeah, Washington and Michigan both went 13-0. But to your Boise State point, I've always said like Liberty, I think, went 13-0. Is that right, Patrick?
Sounds right. I don't watch a ton of college football.
Liberty went 13-0. Don't put them in the same league, or don't put them in the same division or sport as Alabama. Like, why do you have something where you can show up at training camp in August and tell these guys, like, guys, I know, like, if you do everything you're supposed to do, you win every game that we play, we either probably won't or at best might get to play in the postseason. That's nuts. Like, that's such a stupid, ridiculous thing.
133 Division I football schools, Greg, under this new first cut proposition that we're putting together right now. Maybe we'll have 20 D1 schools and 20 D2. D3. We'll have 30 different divisions. And then if you win, you're guaranteed to get in some way. We'll do promotion. We'll do relegation. What do you think?
Oh, it's not a bad idea. Because it's a really strong point, KP. Your Florida State, the Florida State Seminoles, you run the table, and it's just not enough. Right? It's a hard, and I see the Georgia point too. How is Georgia not in there? And Texas, how are they not in there? I know they are, but how could you pull them out?
Alabama also just steals one away from Auburn, right?
They lose in week 2 and win the rest of their games.
Everyone's talking about the eye test. I've been a yearly subscriber for years.
Subscriber for years.
So multiple years. They just forget about that Auburn-Alabama game where they had someone on KP's flag football team covering Bond in the back of the end zone.
Unbelievable.
And they need a 30-yard fourth and goal to win. They talk about the teams as they are currently. I mean, that team was two weeks ago. That Auburn guy could have just made it so much easier on everyone else. And then Florida State,
this thing down. Everybody's happy.
But meanwhile, I'm an ACC homer, to tell you the truth. Florida State, they take down a top 15 team with their third string quarterback. If that was Alabama, people would be going nuts. They'd be like, look at this team. They're so good. They're so good.
Look at the depth. Look at the depth of their team.
Sad.
You hate to see. I mean, it's a little bit of like, it's kind of like how we talk about the Ryder Cup, where there's just enough wiggle room to where you can kind of pin stuff on whatever. Like the committee can just like kind of throw phrases around and say whatever fits the current narrative. And as much as it's like, I like to complain about it, it's also like hilarious and fun, and it's going away next year because they're expanding, and none of this will ever be a problem.
That's my final thought on this is there are no repercussions this year for leaving out Florida State, because otherwise you would have this unbelievable precedent of a Power 5 team going undefeated and not getting into the playoffs. How could you ever start this precedent? You don't have to worry about it because we're going to 12.
I'm glad it is a bailout. I'm glad they didn't get bailed out by either Auburn or Louisville winning last night. I'm glad they had to make the call, and it's a sick call. Like I don't know. I mean, imagine can you imagine running a Florida State website today? The traffic that you would get, and just
they're already threatening legal action.
Oh God.
Have you guys ever seen the movie Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell?
Yeah.
I could picture a scene in this movie where at the NCAA they're having their meeting. 4 best teams. 4 best teams go. We will win 4th place.
So good. Well, decisions were made. College Football Playoff Committee. Decisions were made. USGA R&A. Reports have that next week a rollback will be announced. We've been going through this for seemingly ever. Earlier this year, there was a proposal, or at least the idea, of bifurcation to different sets of golf balls for touring pros, and one for them, one for everyone else. That was just not received very well. Not by me. I thought that was a great idea, but by those who actually matter. And with this announcement next week seemingly coming, Rory McIlroy was tweeting. Now, KP, it's caught my attention. Rory McIlroy doesn't tweet. Right? Rory McIlroy retweets his sponsor stuff, his very highly produced video content. He says things like, hey, was great to see y'all out there. It's awesome. He does not tweet opinion very often.
Well, but he's not even the one tweeting the other stuff, right? It's somebody that's
presumably,
that's doing it for him. Yeah, he was fired up, and it's an interesting thing to kind of enter in on, right? Like to jump in for all the things, you can see the tweet here, for all the things that have happened over the last, 2 years, I thought it was interesting that this is the thing he kind of jumps back, and he kind of jumped into the comments too. Did you read any of
He's
the
replying back and forth. So Michael Zisman, some random guy who tweets at him with 101 followers, he's right back at it. Old Duffer is looking for clarification. You know who's giving you clarification in the comments? Rory McIlroy,
the number 2 player in the world.
He's engaging with the people.
He's
Rory
one of us.
McIlroy replied to your tweet.
What? Yeah. I mean, there's just so many. I think the one thing I didn't understand about, I agreed with a lot of it. The thing that I didn't understand was the last sentence, Rick. And he said bifurcation was the logical answer for everyone. But yet again, in this game, money talks. And I don't know that he's wrong. I just don't know what the reference is when he says money talks.
Can I tell you what I think it is?
Sure. I'd love for you to.
I'm going to take off my cap and put on my conspiracy.
Put on the tinfoil, Rick.
Because I think that line is very, very important. I have never been now more convinced that Jon Rahm is going to live. So because of that final line from Rory McIlroy. And this is what I think happened. Rory McIlroy is venting on Twitter. Rory McIlroy is looking for something to get fired up about. He cannot go out and say, oh, Jon Rahm's going to live. This is BS. I put myself out there for 2 years, and it all comes back to yet again in this game, money talks. And I think that he is using the rollback and lack of bifurcation as a way to mix it up and remind everyone that yet again in this game, money talks. And I think it is stemming from Jon Rahm going to live.
That's interesting.
A Trojan horse, so to speak.
But yeah. That could be the case, obviously. But what is the money in this instant, like as it relates to this specific topic? Like
I believe it is. I believe in this topic, it is the manufacturers not wanting to spend millions of dollars on research and development for a new rolled back golf ball that they cannot sell to the general public.
So like not want, like the preference for the OEMs would be to have it be uniform. Like if you ranked the preference for the OEMs, it would be don't roll it back uniformly, roll it back uniformly, and bifurcation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so if they can't have the first one, then they would pick the second one over the third one. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's
100%.
fair.
Yeah, that's where partly where the bottom lines come from, but they also come from the PGA, not just of America, but PGAs worldwide, not the PGA Tour, right? These are the quote unquote governing bodies that run all of the club professionals around the world. And they put together a really strong report in the during the comments period to the USGA, asking not only to not do bifurcation, but to not do anything because of conflicting data. They said this data that you're making your claims on is potentially wrong because we have some data that's conflicting, and a lot of our research tells a different story. So please at least wait. At the very least, wait. They were very respectful.
Who was that from, Greg?
The PGA of Americas worldwide.
Okay.
Like the coalition of PGAs around the world.
Gotcha.
And they were not against bifurcation. They were against rolling it back in general. And you think about who they represent the clubs around the entire world. So every golf course around the world, which the crazy thing to me is this rollback is for the clubs around the world so they can be more sustainable. The clubs around the world who are represented by their PGA club professionals say, hey, things are great. Don't mess with it. And your data is incorrect. So please wait. And we can come together and work together and try to figure out more correct data and make a better decision. But to go on the decision you're making, to go on the data you have right now is a really poor decision. And they just do it anyway. So that's part of the frustration as well. What is the purpose of the who are you listening to in the comment period?
It's difficult to reconcile some of those comments, Patrick, because you hear things like, oh, it's only going to be 10 or 15 yards. It's not going to be that big of a deal. But then you also hear it's going to be a massive deal. We can now play St. Andrews for the next 300 years. Which one is it?
Can I tell you the truth about this whole thing? One, I'm pretty jazzed up they didn't do bifurcation, because that's a really hard word to pronounce for me.
It is. It took me a really long time to get it right.
Two, I honestly don't really care. I know I'm supposed to have an opinion on everything, but look, on one side of the aisle, you got people hooting and hollering about sustainability. They're protecting the old golf courses like St. Andrews, right? They're the guardians of golf, the real historians and purists. They sound like Al Gore in 2000 pretty much. And then on the other side of the aisle, you got the people who are like, oh, if they take my golf ball, what's next? Are they going to take my driver? Are the governing bodies going to knock down my door and take my liberties, all my rights? And yeah, like you said, it's 10, 15 yards. The average Joe, one, they're playing golf balls that aren't appropriate for their swing speeds, or they find in ponds, lakes, trees, all scuffed up, or even worse, the refurbished Titleist. They love to buy those because they're a little cheaper. And so at the end of the day, one, I don't think they're really gonna notice the difference between 240 and 230 yards. And two, they're not gonna really notice Rory McIlroy hitting the ball 330 or 315. So it's all relative to me. I don't really care. Give me a ball, I'll play it, and let's just, move forward.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit with Patrick. I care more about, I wrote about this back in whenever it came out, March, like just the idea of, do you want to keep going to St. Andrews? And if you don't, then fine. Like you don't have to want that, but if you do, then you sort of have to be in favor of some type of, pumping the brakes on distance, whether it's through the golf ball or through the drive. There's a number of different ways you could get to it. And I guess if uniform rollback gets me to getting to keep going to St. Andrews and going to Marion and going to different places that, at the professional level, then fine. Like, I'll not hit the ball 7 yards. I'll hit drive 7 yards less than I do right now. I don't really care that much about that. I guess I would prefer bifurcation just for my own sake in playing, but I don't, it's not like a huge loss to me, because I do think it at least like puts some guardrails up at the professional level, which is the part that I pay attention to and probably care about the most. That's a selfish point of view, though. Like, that's specifically my point of view.
I think it's actually not a selfish point of view, because you'd be willing to give up 7 yards for the pros to continue to go to St. Andrews.
Yeah, but I care
on your sword.
But I'm saying I care more about covering. Like, I care more about going to St. Andrews than I do about hitting a drive.
Yeah,
280 versus 273 or whatever.
There's a lot of it that bothers me. I was just in favor of keeping everything the same. Then I would have preferred bifurcation. The full rollback, I think, is my third option. The thing,
really,
yeah. So a couple things. The thing for me is, who has been losing constantly for the last 2 years? Just average golf fans, just like average normal golf fans. 2020 was an absolute boom for golf, and we have just ruined it by ruining the professional game, and now we're coming for the amateur recreation game too. It is so what do they say? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. It is just so insane how we are shooting ourselves in the foot time and time again. The thing that I think about, going to some of these courses, Greg, whether it's St. Andrews or Marion, just shoot 30 under. I don't care. Right? The NFL has shattered records through passing. The NBA has shattered records with a new style of play that is 3-pointers based and efficiency based. Just shatter records. I don't care. It does not offend me if we are going to go destroy St. Andrews.
Yeah, a couple things on this. One, St. Andrews, it's one of the few golf courses where the design date is unknown. But I can tell you it was around a time when golf was banned because the King of England thought that people weren't practicing their archery enough and they were practicing golf too much.
This is true.
So this is true.
I love
This is incredible.
This is we're talking maybe 1400s, maybe 1500s, maybe 1600s.
I think it was 15 or yeah. It was like pre-printing press.
Yeah, there's date on the every other golf course has a date stamped on. Like we know when they were designed and redesigned and who did them and all that. So, and the other thing about St. Andrews is since we've been playing open championships there, the difficulty of it depends on the weather, which still happens.
For sure.
Right. And if you don't get wind, you're going to tear it up. And my thought was always, hey, the RNA is okay with this. This is the way it is. And I applaud the RNA because they don't worry about score. They're okay with records being set. But now all of a sudden it's this big problem. Like we can't go back to St. Andrews anymore. And that really bothers me. Then you come to the U.S. and you have a place like Marion. And the last time we played Marion, 1 over par 1. And again, I don't care about the score, but the distance isn't the thing that's going to make a difference. So let's go back across the pond to St. Andrews one more time. There are 7 holes, 7 par 4s that are under 400 yards there. I mean, how far back do you have to roll this golf ball back to enhance the skill? What are we going to start giving guys 4 irons into 350-yard holes? No, that's not going to happen. It will be even more of a pitch and putt 15 yards shorter. You'll see a lot more pitching. Now it's driver putt. Now it's driver and putter. But you can't roll this golf ball back far enough to make St. Andrews a true ball striking test, whatever you consider that to be. So those things, again, you're talking about what, 2-3 golf courses that are in trouble here, especially when you have the PGAs of America around the world coming out against this. They are the ones that run and they operate the golf courses that are quote unquote becoming obsolete. And they're telling you, no, they're not becoming obsolete. You're saying, yes, they are. We have to protect this game. I mean, I don't understand what that means. Protect the game from what? From 30 under par, winning a tournament? And by the way, if that starts to happen every week and we don't like it and golf goes into trouble because it's too easy and because nobody's playing because it's too easy and nobody's watching the PGA Tour or LIV golf or professional golf because it's too easy, well, change it then. Why would you change it right now? This is the last thing I'll say. We have a saying. It's a rule we live by with our students when it comes to club fitting. You don't get fit for clubs when you're playing exceptionally well, and you don't get fit for clubs when you're playing exceptionally poorly, because you're probably going to get a bad fit one, and you don't need to introduce new equipment into the game at that point. You do it when it's somewhere in the middle. And the game of golf right now is in an exceptionally good place, as even Mike Wan has admitted. Everybody is admitting it. Everybody in golf is doing really exceptionally well. It's not a time to make a change to preserve your legacy as a protector of the game.
What was the part you said about St. Andrews that bothers you?
Well, many, but the thing about protecting St. Andrews is it doesn't need to be protected. There's nothing wrong with St. Andrews and the way it is now. And there may come a time when this golf course that was designed in the 1400s is antiquated and the game passes it by. And I would say just about everything I can think of that was designed in the 1400s or earlier has been replaced by something better. And, you know, there's a very strong irony to me that this is the problem, that it's getting too easier. Yet the golf courses that we design now, where we went to the U.S. Open last year at LACC, as 80-yard wide fairways. But the game's too easy. We got to roll the ball back, but we got 80-yard wide fairways here. The PGA Tour doesn't say the game's too easy. They cut the rough down to nothing every week because offense sells, distance sells, records sell. Not hitting 4 irons into par 4s, but they still can do that from time to time. But you don't know the difference when you're watching on TV. You see the score that they shoot. If the PGA Tour really thought there was a problem with the game being too easy, they would adjust setups. And if golf courses around the world thought their golf course is getting obsolete, they wouldn't cut all their trees down. But that's what every golf course is doing, cutting down trees, mowing rough shorter. Fairways are getting faster. They're cutting the grass height even lower. Things that are and wider. Things are designed to make the game more fun, more accessible, and that's included at the professional level. But we're going to attack the distance and point this entire thing at the distance that the golf ball is traveling, and it's potentially extremely harmful to the business of golf. It's one thing I do agree with in Rory. It all comes down to money, and the money could be harmed significantly. And everybody, unless you've signed a big signing bonus, is probably potentially going to feel the effects of that.
One question that I saw that Joseph Lamagna posed, I think it was today, maybe yesterday, was about, and I'd love for all three of you guys to answer this, is if you don't think that if you don't think that distance is a problem, at what point would it be a problem? Like, what if the average drive on the PGA Tour was 600 yards?
That would be a problem.
So there's a spot between where we're at and 600 yards. I'm just making up numbers at which it becomes a problem. Do you guys have a tipping point for that?
I never have a problem.
So you have no number.
Correct.
If the driver's taken out of play entirely and nobody's hitting driver because it would go over the green, that would be a problem.
I welcome.
That would be sick.
Imagine,
like it's a 550-yard hole. I better club down here, or else
What do you take,
3 or 4 iron?
That would be awesome.
Pin, let's go with a 4 iron.
I welcome evolution, optimization, advancement in health and strength and the game, and all. I welcome all of that. There will not be a point where I think distance alone is a problem, which I think is the way you kind of phrased it, KP, because there's other, like, okay, so make a hole, a 500-yard hole, and it's an island green and there's nothing between the tee box and, we'll figure it out, right? Like, this idea
that's absurd. A 500-yard island green.
That's obviously absurd. But this idea that the only solution that we can come up with is to take the golf ball and roll it back for millions of people instead of the hundreds or maybe thousands that it matters for is insane to me.
And even worse than that, Rick, it's not even the thousands that it matters for. It's for the one golf course that we want to save for an event that we play there every 5 years.
I'll see if I can find this photo. There's a photo, I think it's of Riviera from, I don't know, like the 40s or 50s, where the fairways are the same and the rough is like literally up to their thighs. Like, I'm not exaggerating.
I think
literally up
to
their thighs.
photo.
Yeah, but that doesn't make for more interesting golf, does it?
Is that more interesting is that what we're going? Are we going for more interesting golf, or are we trying to preserve golf courses?
We are very clearly trying to preserve golf courses.
I think there's a lot of things that are very interesting, but that's not what this has been about.
I think the two go hand in hand. Like, if we're talking about St. Andrews, if we're trying to preserve St. Andrews, I think you're trying to do so in a way that makes it more interesting. It's not that interesting to me for Gordon Sargent to drive every green at St. Andrews.
Could be interesting to someone else, though.
Sure.
There are a lot of articles written about that.
I don't disagree with that. And I'm arguing from my personal point of view. Patrick, you ducked the question here. What's the number for you?
I agree with Rick where I do appreciate kind of the continuation of athletes getting better. You know, you think about MJ, the argument's pretty clear that LeBron's a better athlete than Michael Jordan, whether people come at me for that or not. Who knows?
How clear is it?
Hot topics today.
2, I appreciate Greg going at St. Andrews. There's a new little rivalry going there, which I really like. But as for distance, I don't have a number. I don't really care because if you say 600, it's never going to get to 600 yards. It just isn't. Okay. That's just a dumb talking point, I think, because it's unrealistic. If it gets
I do wonder what is like the ceiling, like what could it
before Gordon Sargent doesn't have a spine.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, what is the because I think the thing that gets missed in some of this, and I made this argument at the beginning of the year, is Patrick, this is where I disagree with you of like, yeah, LeBron's a better athlete, but he's also facing better athletes. Like the defense in basketball, the defense in baseball and football are getting
all the rules.
But sure, but I'm saying like the defense gets equivalently better with as the offense in these other sports. There is no defense in golf, and so
I love this argument from you, KP. I completely agree with it that there is really no defense in golf. We saw it with what Mac Hughes the other day, right? Shot like the best week of his career at the RSM, still lost by 3 shots. You can't play defense on your opponent. Isn't thick rough changing out of bounds? There are ways to play defense. We just haven't done them
because we don't want to do them.
I think changing some of that stuff creates a I ultimately I think rolling the ball back creates a better product. Now we're talking about professional, not like for us, not at the amateur level. I think rolling the ball back creates a better and more interesting product than like some of the things you mentioned, growing the rough, pinching the out of bounds, all that. Think about like, I made this argument in Normal Sport 3, which comes out in 2 weeks, but
nice.
The women's US Open, I think is such a good example of like what rolling the ball back does, because the USGA has the ability to set the like a Pebble Beach or wherever they go, Pine Needles, they have the ability to set it up in different ways on different days. And now we're like really in the weeds and like golf nerdiness and stuff that probably a lot of people don't care about. But I think I think a lot of these organizations, especially the USGA and RNA, feel constrained by, well, there's only like one way we can set up this course. And if you want to make it harder, then we have to make it kind of silly, right? We've seen this at Shinnecock. We've seen this at different places. And this just gives you the freedom to, like Rory said, some of the skills that have been eradicated can shine a little bit brighter at the professional level if you do roll the ball back. I think overall at the professional level, it just makes for a more interesting product.
There are many different ways we could take this. We would have to talk about enforcement. We would have to throw out other ideas like everybody using the same exact set of clubs. I think that's kind of interesting, but like
no tees.
There's like a lot of ways this conversation can go. And I'm sure we'll head down some of those paths in coming weeks and months. And who knows, maybe even years, but we're going to put a pin in it right now. We're going to continue this conversation with we haven't even talked about Tiger Woods yet. We've got DP World Tour. I don't know what Jon Rahm's new situation is. A lot to talk about. We'll hit it on the other side.
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
And we're back. Let's just go try to keep this relatively short, but
just like we did with Rollback.
There's a lot to talk about. Is Jon Rahm going to go to LIV? Right now, it is just unnamed reports from Twitter accounts that are not associated with even real names.
You're setting me up for another rant, Rick.
I know, a preacher. I'm giving Greg an opportunity to preach today. But I think KP, you might have tweeted this out or you might have said it. There have been times where Rahm when this has come up before, he's kind of been quick to deny it, which we haven't seen this time around. Obviously, the dynamics of LIV's relationship with the PGA Tour have changed as we're bearing down on the deadline for a framework agreement becoming a permanent agreement. So where do we stand on this whole thing?
Okay, I've got 3 things real quick. I'll try to keep it short.
Okay.
1, he hasn't, you just said this, Rick, but one of my points was he hasn't denied it when in the past, he has denied it when the rumors have been half as strong, a quarter as strong. I mean, it's been like a lot of smoke for 10 days now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been nothing. I think
contract details.
No Line Up had a report that his management or whatever wouldn't respond or didn't comment, or I can't remember the exact wording. So that's one thing. 2, people I've talked to that are not Twitter personalities with LIV in their name have kind of leaned toward him going to LIV. And so it's not just I think in the past, there's been this kind of stirring up of the waters by people who might be incentivized to do so, or it might be just like fun to, chum the waters, so to speak. This is certainly that, but there's something like additional there. I'm not reporting that so-and-so is saying anything, but there's been people outside of that are like, yeah, this is a real thing. And this is probably happening, which is fascinating. And then 3, the part that I don't get, Rick, and maybe we can discuss this, is the timing of it, not from Jon Rahm's perspective. I understand that completely, but the timing of it from LIV's perspective, where is it a situation, and I wrote about this in the Normal Sport newsletter, is a situation where the PIF is at the negotiating table saying like, well, $1 billion was going to be 22% of your organization, but now since we have Rahm, it's 26. Is it simply is it a bargaining chip?
I believe it is. And because it's a very strong bargaining chip, and it also implies that things could get much worse for you, right?
For sure.
Because if Jon Rahm goes to LIV and this deal does not get done, it's been fun, PGA Tour. It's nice knowing you, because Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, they'll be next to go, and we'll probably reach that tipping point. The idea that the blood money that the PGA Tour has hid behind for 2 years and then said, we'll accept it. Well, now the players can just get it themselves. No questions asked, and the PIF has all the leverage in the world. So that is, yes, to me, whether they're real, whether they are maybe substantial, maybe good rumors, maybe accurate, I think this is a huge bargaining chip for LIV.
I think not only that, because when you look forward, it looks like the PGA Tour is going to have control of the Enterprise Starship. Where
maybe
the PIF will have to negotiate with Jay and his cronies, and then likely kick him out and actually have someone who they deem competent running the ship. So it really could be the best of both worlds, where you poach their talent with Rahm, rumors of Cantlay, which I find not odd, but kind of odd given his position on the policy board. He was just extended. He just sent out that player memo to the rest of the membership, who, I mean, we haven't even talked about that, them sending their memo back to them, the petition for everyone to sign, where PIF could possibly negotiate with someone who they deem less than smart. I've talked to people who have been around Fenway who all agree Monahan has handled like a dunce, and have someone in the future lead it who they like.
You're talking about the PIF would do that?
Well, yeah. I mean, as it stands right now, if we're all, logically speaking, it would be they're dealing or they're negotiating with Jay Monahan. If they take Rahm, Cantlay, Xander, a whole new lot of stars, you're a PGA Tour player, you want Monahan gone. He's already broken your trust. He's proven he can't run the ship anymore. He can't protect his house. And so the PIF will have what, 30%, 40%. They're going to be a minority. They're not going to be a majority owner in this.
Oh, so you're saying they would basically be like walking tour players into getting a new person in leadership.
Correct. While negotiating with someone who they think they can take advantage of.
Yeah, which is, I mean, what a freaking mess. Like, how do we end up in I mean, I was talking to some guys today, just friends at church, that were like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what, like, I can't even explain like what golf is going to look like in 2025 or whatever, you know, to where it's like, okay, well, are you going to have two, like the part that I don't get, like what organization would ever want its assets separated like we have with the PGA Tour and LIV? I've been saying this for 12 months now. And yet when you hear Tiger talk on Tuesday at the Hero, he's talking about, well, we got to figure out how to incorporate team golf. Like if you read between the lines, LIV is not like it's staying, and which whatever, like that's totally fine if they want to do that. But I just don't get how it's all going to work together and interact. And maybe I have no vision for it. Maybe they don't, maybe they're just making all this up as they go.
Sounds like it, Greg. I think they are definitely making it up as they go along.
If you wrote Normal Sport 4 right now,
good luck.
Okay, not the one that's coming out in a couple weeks. You just wrote it now as a novel and made up the craziest stories you possibly could.
That would be awesome.
I don't know if it could get crazier than this.
Are we sure Kyle's not writing the script for all of this?
Yeah.
Like, have we ever considered that for the last couple of years?
No, I mean, yeah. The puppet master.
What just a weird, like, bleak dystopian turn of events.
And part of this is the thing I was going to rant on. Like, you don't know. I don't know. So you asked the initial question, Rick, is Jon Rahm going to LIV? And I would take a question like that normally and look at the evidence, look at what people have said, look at some strokes gain data, and try to figure out what's going on. But you have Jon Rahm, who said in person a number of things, saying, I'm not going to go to LIV. I don't play for money. $400 million wouldn't change our lives. So I'm not going.
It's a sick quote.
But at the same time, on the other side, we're hearing rumors that sound very true, but they're coming from nameless Twitter accounts, which is it's one thing if Kyle Porter tweets it out, right? If you're wrong, Kyle, you're on the hook for it.
That bothers me. That bothers me a lot, where it's like, you don't even have to be right. Like, you're just saying, like,
and it can all be off the record. But if Rory McIlroy is talking to Kyle Porter, he knows that Kyle is a writer for CBS, and what he tells him is either going to be, hey, this is off the record, don't write about it, or hey, this is going to be written about. Whereas if somebody's talking to me, if Rory's talking to me, or if I'm just in the room and Rory's talking to Jay Monahan and I'm, drinking a glass of water next to him, and he tells him something, I could fire that out in a tweet as Isofire 7-Eleven.
Please do.
All of a sudden, nobody except people who listen to the First Cut podcast know who that is. And so there's like no credibility behind it. So it sounds like all these rumors have a ton of credibility behind them, but they come from unknown sources, unknown that get their information from unknown places. And it leaves me feeling, unknown and very frustrated.
Go off, Greg. Let's go. What do you think about Chris Stroud?
It's a career game from Greg.
Let's move on to Chris Stroud.
This stuff fires me up.
I agree. Like the lack of, and listen, like everybody gets stuff wrong. Like we're in this business where we make predictions and we have opinions, and of course, like you get stuff wrong. But the lack of like any accountability over whether you're reporting something over and over again that turns out to be false is just like, it's infuriating. Like, congratulations on like saying something that hasn't been true 25 times, and on the 26th time it's true. Like, there were no ramifications for you. Like, that must be a fun way to make content.
But if it was true, if it was true, honest reporting, and people were telling you, why wouldn't it be your name? It's great if you break a story and it's a big story in the game of golf. But the problem is, the reason you don't share your name is because people won't tell you those kind of things if they know who you are and what you do. Right? They're less likely to give Kyle Porter the dirt as a writer with a platform than they are me. Right? Somebody who they may not even know. And I'm having a conversation, and it's not really going to go anywhere. Yet I do have a platform, but it's hidden behind a cloak.
Well, and I think Josh makes a good point here. He says it drives me. Well, I don't know if he wants this out there, but I agree with it. So I'm going to just say it, Josh. So it drives me crazy that accounts like that actually have audiences. And I agree. There's my brother calls this the lack of media literacy. Like, people look at Nuclear Golf and Rick Run Good and think that they're the same. And it's like, well, Rick Run Good has like real ramifications if he says a bunch of stuff that's untrue, because all of a sudden he breaks trust with his customers that trust him, which is his entire business. And Nuclear Golf just keeps on tweeting. And that differentiation is infuriating. Like, it is absolutely infuriating. And hand up, I've gotten stuff wrong about like predictions, opinion, all that different. I'm not saying that I was wrong. I've been wrong about 1,000 things with LIV.
But you always take heat for it.
But I always take heat for it, and I don't put stuff out there that is just like not like true. Like, not it's always just my opinion. I'm not saying things as if they're fact that are not fact.
We were talking about it earlier, where you can say anything you want, and if you're wrong, you just say like, "Oh well, he had a change of heart."
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's just no. You can
right
never
there at the finish line.
Yeah, they were close.
Jon Rahm
Ink was a millimeter away from getting on the paper, and then something went awry.
Well, and that's the language, right? It's like, oh, it's a done deal. Well, is it a signed deal or is it a quote done deal? Like, those are very different things. And there's such a benefit to the LIV side, like whether it's Phil or Norman or whoever, feeding all these little social accounts, little nuggets, little tidbits, because then it starts to change the public discourse. It turns the tide, and then all of a sudden you've just sort of like convinced Jon Rahm that he's that he is going to LIV. It's crazy.
Jon Rahm found out on Twitter that he's going to LIV. And
yeah,
like, oh, sure. Listen, and it is almost. We'll move on, but there is almost this idea of you do this, you throw something against the wall, and you just see what public perception is. And if it's not as bad as you think, it's like, okay, maybe I will do X, Y, and Z, right? There's a litmus test to it when you don't have to answer to anything.
Yeah.
All right. Jeez, oh man. All right, we'll figure out Jon Rahm. He was going to go to LIV after the U.S. Open, then the last U.S. Open. There's going to be an announcement next week, allegedly. We have no idea. We'll announce it. We will talk about it when it happens.
Do you think there will be one way or the other? We'll find out next week what's happening.
Well,
have to, right?
Why? Well, the only way it's definitely is if he says he's going.
We have Yasser and Jay are meeting.
Oh,
that's happening.
That's
and
next
then
week.
They're in Dubai this week for their Q school as well.
I think he will.
Jay's.
I think Rahm will either deny or confirm it next week. Is what I'm saying.
God, man, I can't. This is going to be tough.
What's going to happen? Not to keep us from the hero, but like, what will like
the two logical paths are path one. Yasser in the PIF says, actually, here's now what we want. And Jay says, okay. And then Jay goes back to the PGA Tour and says, look, LIV is going to own the team aspect of this. There's going to be 8 team events and 6 other non-team events on LIV. And if you're on a team, you have to play those 8 events or whatever. And then the stroke play individual stuff will live here on the PGA Tour with, all the
Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one path. Or the other path is, okay, we have Jon Rahm, and now we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 other guys who are wondering why they're still hanging around on the PGA Tour. We don't get a deal done, and mass exodus. And now the game is truly split.
My question is, there's this meeting next week between Jay and Yasser. Would they announce it before or after the meeting? Probably before, right? Be like, oh, wow.
Probably depends.
Guess we just got John.
What that meeting's about.
It's about the deal.
Yeah, but where are they? Tiger said this week everybody's being amicable. Right? This wouldn't be an amicable move.
No.
Regardless of intentions, this is the opposite of amicable. It's warfare. So I don't know what's going on with that deal.
I mean, I just don't know between the uprising on the tour and like you're getting it going both ways. If you're the tour, you've got the bad players that are pissed. You've got the good players that might be leaving. Like, what do you have?
Is there anyone happy on the PGA Tour right now?
What's left? It's going to be just like Rory playing 72 holes by himself. Right? Like I that's the question I've been asking myself all week is what is this going to look like if Rahm does go to LIV? And I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what that answer is because it's not good.
Now, this last question I have here. Do people turn on the TV to watch Jon Rahm? Are you going to switch from watching if you're a PGA Tour fan, are you going to switch over from watching the PGA Tour every week to go watch Jon Rahm? And I ask that because I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm probably not. There's only really one player who I would watch play in any format, anywhere, anytime.
Spieth.
He played this week. Well, I'll leave a little mystery. But there's really only like one guy. The collection is what makes it strong. So part of me feels like if this happens, the game just loses Jon Rahm. It's not like there's a whole fan shift where everybody shifts over.
But there starts to be
lose them.
There starts to be a tipping point where you lose Rahm, Cantlay, Scheffler. You start to go down this list, and it's like, oh well, that's actually the better tour,
right?
Do fans start to watch it because it's better, or do we just lose fans? Well, I think generally fans watch only like the four majors, really, and then whatever's on TV Sunday, and that just happens to be on NBC or CBS, and they struggle with finding the CW.
I refuse to live in a world where I have to go to CW to watch Jon Rahm play golf. Like, well, I can't believe it.
I think in some ways we've sort of, and I don't know how this is possible, but we've sort of underrated what is like the shift that is taking place. Like, imagine the NBA being upended. And I know we've said this over and over again, but with each like Rahm type event, it becomes more clear. Imagine like the NBA, which has existed for whatever, 60, 70 years, being completely upended. Forget about Saudi Arabia or anything like that, but just as an organization. Like, that's just such a, I think we think about these organizations as if they'll go on forever. And it's like, well, maybe at some point they won't. Like, not all companies and organizations last forever. And I think what's a little bit of what's going on here that's hard to sort of internalize is the PGA Tour might be getting upended and might be completely gone in 3 years. I don't necessarily think that's the case, but that could be what's happening here.
I always go back and think about how easy it kind of all was. And that is because I think just because golf was so ripe for this, and there are other sports that are as well, but with the structure of it, the independent contractor nature, how everything was kind of already split amongst these governing bodies with different, it was just, it didn't have everybody pulling in one direction, but there was really only ever one direction to go. And everyone was just kind of zombie walking in that way, that when another direction opens up and now you actually have, I don't want to say cliques forming, but groups forming and ideas forming and it was so ripe for this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on an optimistic note, we can talk about Tiger Woods and his 4 rounds of the Hero World Challenge. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
And we're back. The Big Cat, even par. That's 75, 70, 71, 72 in his first competitive event since this year's Masters. He finished 18th out of a field of 20, beating Will Zalatoris, who was also making his return from injury, and Wyndham Clark. The Big Cat got through, Patrick, all 4 rounds, seemingly looked pretty good. Mentioned how sore he was after the round. Still sweats very much. What was your takeaway from Tiger's week?
I was very encouraged, probably as encouraged as I have been in quite some time. He's always flashed a little bit. You think back to the Genesis Invitational. He opened up with the 69, but couldn't follow it up. And then on Saturday, he shoots 67, but he couldn't follow it up on Sunday. So being able to string back-to-back under par rounds there in the middle rounds. First time he's done that since the 2020 Masters, was really encouraging in my mind. And you look at how many birdies he made 19. So the scoring is still kind of right there. A lot of mistakes, like you mentioned, a lot of mental, stupid mistakes, a lot of short game, touchy-feely shots that weren't Tiger-esque. And I mean, he played the par fives in 4 under. There's 20 of them out there at Albany he had a chance at. He made a mess of the par 5 15th a couple times. So I think all in all, it was a really encouraging week for him. He still has speed. I think he ranked, 4th, 3rd off the tee. He drove the ball great. Iron play was, pretty shoddy, I would say. Didn't really give himself a ton of chances, but he made some nice putts to kind of make up for it. So since 2021, like these past 2 years, I don't think I've been as encouraged as I was this week.
4th in the field in strokes gained off the tee for the week. Dead last in approach, 16th out of 20th around the green, 18th out of 20 in strokes gained putting. He did have a couple of better putting days, but there seemed to be, I think it's easy. Everybody wants Tiger to be great, Greg, right? I want Tiger to be great. I want him to compete. And you can hear it from everybody that when he does something well, oh, he's amazing. Of course he can do that because he's Tiger Woods. And when something goes wrong, oh, well, he's rusty. He needs to get more reps in. It's like, it's very easy to gloss over. I think there was a lot of rust. But I do think that, he doesn't flush it as well as everybody else. And that's okay. He doesn't play that much. He's 40 whatever years old. There are guys who were flushing it way better than he was this week, as expected.
Yes. Although I still think he flushes it. It's just more like the way Kyle flushes it than, offline flusher. But I agree with Patrick. I haven't felt as optimistic as I do today at any point after the surgery. And the reason is that rust that you mentioned, this stuff can be sharpened, and there's hope that after this event, other than a couple hours of recovery, whatever that recovery routine is, he can get to work. Whereas when he played the Masters before, it's almost like if you run a marathon, which I've never done, but I've heard about it. You train to prepare for the marathon. And if you run 8 miles, you get better at running 8 miles. And you run 9 miles and you get better at running 9 miles. But when you run 26, it doesn't really make you better at it. It kind of hurts you. So I've heard. And that's what it felt like golf with Tiger. When Tiger played 4 rounds of golf, it was so detrimental to his health that there was no opportunity to gather any momentum, make any strides, and improve. And this week, I feel like because of what we saw with his speed, what we saw with his health, what we saw with the way he was walking, and the fact that he did finish 4 solid rounds, considering the circumstances, he will be able to build on this and actually improve the areas that clearly needed improvement.
When Tiger said on Tuesday, KP, that he hopes or plans to play once a month, I thought that was fairly insane and crazy. I feel like it's a little less insane after watching these 4 rounds. And Tiger was asked about it after his Sunday final round. He said that was the plan going into next year, and I don't see why that would change.
Yeah, by the way, I've been doing speed training, Greg, so I'm just flushing it even more offline.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm with you, Rick. Whenever he said that, I was like, I don't know. I think the thing that people forget is like it's not just the leg; it's everything else. The back, the neck, the knees. I mean, I just don't know. Like what is because I firmly believe that even as great as Tiger is mentally, he can't just show up at playing once a month and really like truly contend. Like think about how much he played leading up to the 2019 Masters, which he was lucky to win. Like he kind of just fell his way. He did some stuff mentally that was smart. Guys fell apart. But his overall strokes gained number at the 2019 Masters was not good. It shouldn't have won a major, but it did. And he played a lot. He played 5 or 6 times leading up to that Masters. I just don't know, like, what's the expectation, even if he is able to play once a month? Is the expectation that he would win? I just don't think that's realistic. So I remain skeptical of what, like, we expect this. Here's 2019. So he played Tory, he played Riv, he played Mexico, he played the Players, he played match play, and then he played them, and then he won the Masters. That's a lot.
And he finished second in that thing to end 2018.
To Phil. Tiger versus Phil.
So I don't know. I remain confused about what our expectation of Tiger should be, and I don't think my expectation of him showing up is higher than it was, but of him performing is lower than it is for most everybody else, I think.
Yeah, it's just so divergent of the things that he doesn't do well require reps. The reps are not going to happen and or they are going to hurt him. So I don't know how do we bridge that gap? I don't know. I don't think Tiger knows because we haven't been able to figure it out just yet. Agreed that yes, he will show up, he will play, but contention, gonna have to see more.
Yeah, I think he'll give us another. I mean, think about Phil this year at Augusta. He'll give us like something to tickle us a little bit, like a backdoor top 10 or something. But I think that's really all we're gonna get performance wise. I think
he can win with that swing. He's all the factors Kyle mentioned are right on the button. It's a matter of getting it to come all together. But he can win with that swing.
Yeah, it looked freer to me, both walking and swinging, than it has in a long time.
Yes.
The thing is, though, he should go to like the Myrtle Beach Classic if he wants to take the record for himself and not play in all these difficult events that he's going to.
Just give him the record.
Yeah, or at least adjust Slam and Sam's. Or what do we learn is nude knob. At least adjust nude knob's record.
Yeah. What a
first cut
Tiger doesn't launch that way.
I was quite tickled by Scottie Scheffler's performance this week because he went 69, 66, 65, 68, 20 under par, a 3-shot victory to earn the $1 million and title of the 2023 Hero World Challenge champion. And it was vintage Scottie Scheffler, second in strokes gained off the tee, fourth on approach, sixth around the green. But look at this, Patrick. He puts a new putter in the bag, an Olsen putter. Gains just a shade under a stroke for the week. And that's plenty when you're Scottie Scheffler.
It is. And I think we'll get to a player and talk about someone else's putter moving forward, but it's not guaranteed in 2024 that Scottie Scheffler is going to hit the ball like he did in 2023, which I think is lost on a lot of people. They just see what he did this year, think it's going to happen for the next handful of years, and everything's going to be fine. But this was an improvement that is needed because more than likely Scottie Scheffler's ball striking, it's not going to fall off a cliff, but it's going to get probably a little worse moving forward because what he did in 2023 was silly. It was dumb. It was record breaking. It was just jaw dropping, really. So for him to put in this new putter, work with Phil Kenyon, he's now reading his putts. Ted Scott is out of the green reading process. Kenyon told him to take ownership of it. Looks like he's really buying in. I think it's really big for this next handful of years because we always mention you have a window in this game to rack up major championships. And Scottie Scheffler is in that window right now. And if he has that putter, it's going to be able to help him in major championships rounds where the ball striking does fall off. And he's able to turn that 76 into a 72. And he's still in it moving forward over the weekend or whatever it may be. So I think it's a huge sign of improvement. And for his 2023, given how good it was statistically, a third win was more than overdue.
He is a machine, and I love the beard. Bearded Scottie goes from clean shaven Scottie is I'm happy to be the number one player in the world. Isn't this cool? Bearded Scottie says, I'm the number one player and I will destroy you.
It's like Rahm.
Yeah. Rahm without a beard is cute.
Weird. Yeah.
Cute and cuddly. With a beard, I don't mess with him.
Menace.
There's a lot to unpack here. So I kind of want to run through a little bit of rapid fire. So Scottie Scheffler wins. No surprise there. He was the co-favorite to win. Justin Thomas now, Greg, started to put it together off of the worst year of his career, goes overseas, plays well, finishes third here, 4 shots behind Scottie Scheffler.
And you started to see him perform like the old Justin Thomas, where the areas of strength are the 2 middle areas, right? Approaching the green and around the green. Both were on full display this week. He lost 2.5 shots approaching the green today, and still finished second in the field. So his iron play looked phenomenal all week. The golf swing looked controlled. It looked like it was in tempo. And he is out of the abyss where he's lost with his game. And now he's starting to contend regularly. I know these aren't designated events and majors, but the events that we've seen him play in, he's performed at a level you'd expect Justin Thomas to perform at. So I would still say, and I feel even stronger about it now, he's back to base camp, and he's going to be a factor in 2024.
Factor in 2024 might be Will Zalatoris. KP wasn't a factor this week. This is the first time we've seen him play. He opened with an 81. He also shot a 79 on Saturday, but his other 2 rounds were 68, 71. He finished last by 9 shots, but I don't think that was really the bar or anything to be considering for Will Zalatoris this week. We just got to see him getting back healthy, getting the reps in and seeing how well he can play.
Yeah, not a good performance, but sort of like Tiger, I didn't really care about the performance. I think the broomstick's interesting. I think you can't judge it on one tournament or 1 or 2, whatever. Like you need time to see that. And I think that's going to be one of the interesting early storylines of the tour year in 2024.
A 8 under 64, one of the rounds of the day by Sepp Straka, finished solo runner up. Patrick, Sepp Straka is kind of a hard guy to figure out. right? He won the John Deere Classic. He finished T2 at the Open Championship. He played well down the stretch. He played okay down the stretch, but then he played after the Tour Championship, had a good start at the BMW PGA, and now almost he didn't almost steal victory, but he at least gave Scottie something to think about in the rearview mirror.
I freaking love Sepp Straka. He's like the Michelin Man. He kind of just shows up. Like you said, he is now the first man from Austria to be a top 20 player in the world. He's got that going for him. And really just a really nice bow on what you just mentioned, a great 2023 season. I mean, a runner-up in a major championship, in the Ryder Cup for the European side, a win at the John Deere Classic. So good for him. And yeah, a really stellar round alongside Jordan Spieth today.
There was a bizarre situation, a bizarre rules situation between Matt Fitzpatrick and Colin Morikawa. And Greg, I'm going to try to explain this. It's quite confusing. I'm not really sure what happened here, but from my understanding, so a couple of years ago when they got rid of the greens reading books, the little books that showed, okay, it was a map of the green. This is, 3% grade. This is 2, this is 4, this is 5. All that was mapped out for you by lasers and such. They got rid of that. And now you're not allowed to copy things into your new unmarked greens reading book that you are using from a different source. It all has to come from like your brain. It all has to come from memory, from experience. You cannot, what is the phrase I'm looking for here? You cannot do what?
Well, you can't use a device to measure something and take those measurements and record them into your notes,
which is what.
But you can use the device. You just can't write it down.
Yes.
Correct.
Right.
Which
so
is
JJ Jakovic, who is Colin Morikawa's caddy, on the practice green used a level to calculate slope. That's how all these guys do it for aim point. There's a ton of levels out there on the PGA Tour. He wrote that down in the yardage book. That is even not where it becomes a penalty, Greg, right? It is not until he uses that information, which apparently Colin used on the 4th hole on Saturday. He used that
only once.
Right.
Which is just crazy. And you heard Colin talk about the rules and how there's a problem with the rule because he's talked to people about it and gotten clearance that it was okay. And now all of a sudden it's not, which is very confusing and a difficult thing to police, right? I mean, it's a very difficult thing to enforce. We're going to look at everybody's at every note that every caddy has in every yardage book.
I've spoken to caddies about this. It's almost unenforceable. In fact, I think this is the first time there's ever really been a penalty assessed for it, because how would you ever know where the source of that information came from? However, unless you're Matt Fitzpatrick, who seemingly called this penalty on Colin Morikawa, or at least called the rules official and said, hey, let's look into this. And then Morikawa was asked about it. They owned up to it. And KP, they were assessed a 2-shot penalty this morning.
Yeah, I mean, what are we doing?
No idea. This is where golf, baseball.
He's protecting the field. That's what he's
doing. No. I'm not blaming Fitzpatrick. There just has to be a better way to adjudicate or to not adjudicate the rule. I mean, it's insane.
Baseball for 50 years did nothing but shoot itself in the foot. I feel like golf shoots itself in the foot all the time. This is not growing the game. This is not really protecting the field. This is a bad rule that it was asking to be exploited. And now one guy got dinged in an event that doesn't matter.
But were they purposefully breaking the rule? Is that what was being sort of implied?
Colin was kind of implying that when they've asked about that before and they've asked other rules officials, there was no problem with it.
That's probably how Fitzpatrick found out about it, right? JJ talking, because he mentioned that he was asking other caddies as well. I wonder if word got around and Fitzpatrick knew the rule better than Colin and brought it up.
No. Well,
I mean,
so it's a crazy thing to me.
It's such a normal sport thing that you took a level on a surface that wasn't the arena, outside of the arena, and wrote down what that level said about the surface outside the arena. And because you wrote it down, if you hadn't written it down, if you just remembered it and used the knowledge inside the arena, you'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you'd written it down and not used the knowledge, you'd also be fine.
Or if you had written it down on another sheet of paper and used it, it would be fine, right? Because it's like he wrote it in his new greens reading book. What if he put it on his hand?
It was. Is that true?
Yeah,
is that true?
I don't think so.
Why not? Why I can't write numbers on my hand now?
I agree with the rule, to tell you the truth.
Because you are such a you're just such a go against the grain guy. This is your brand.
There is so much just science and numbers in today's game. You see it with the aim point, where the artistry of the game has been taken away, and this is all we kind of have left. And so if you can measure it with a level or a compass or whatever scientific device they want, and then just use it in your put it in your notebook and then use it, what have we become?
Well,
that's like saying 4 best teams.
Here's my thing though, Patrick. Either get rid of all of it. Like don't do like this half-ass, well, you can measure it on the practice screen, but then you can't use that information written down in your yardage book during the event. Just say like, no, you can't use any kind of devices on the practice screen or anything.
I'm cool with that. Yeah,
that's
cool with on that. PGA Tour properties.
Just go one way or the other, and don't like the halfway is where it just doesn't make sense to me.
In the game of golf, we allow players to have information. All right, we don't hide information. There are sprinkler heads, there are pin sheets, there are course maps. And I think the greens book is a version of a map that I have no problem with allowing. I don't see any reason to disallow. When you start getting into the devices, to separate, there's an advantage in how information is gathered. Whereas, hey, this is the golf course we're playing. You get on a par 3, and many tournaments will spray paint the yardage to the pin on the par 3. Everybody has it.
Yeah.
It's 154 yards today.
And what you're doing there, Greg, is just trying to reduce the amount of time, because you could walk it off and figure it out, right?
Right.
You're trying to reduce the amount of time it takes to do things like that. When you get into slope and all that, that's like you can't walk that. There's no like, if you want to like try to feel it with your feet and write down what you think it is, be my guest. Awesome.
Yes.
Go ahead. But just go one way or the other. I personally, Patrick, think that the rule book needs to be like 4 rules and get all the other nonsense out of here.
That's fair.
It's become like a piece of code that just gets added to over time, like for a software company. And you're like, this doesn't even mean anything anymore. It's so messy.
There are so many that there's actually 2 books.
Yeah.
That's
what they got to roll back.
That's so on brand.
Reach.
Final thoughts. Anything Hero World Challenge related? Otherwise we will recap the best bets and we will end this show.
I'm pretty sure Fitzpatrick didn't even tell Morikawa about it. He just told the rules official. Yes. And they have not spoken since.
Well, he said that, and also he called in later that night, I guess, because he forgot. He said, I was going to mention it right after the round, but I forgot.
You remember when you used to be able to call in from your couch and say, oh, that guy teed in front of the tee marker?
The fact that they ever allowed that is just that's the baseline of this insanity.
They should allow tweets.
Yeah. Kyle should be able to tweet in a rule.
You tweeted.
Rory McIlroy today on the 18th.
Yeah. All caps.
Oh, I miss Patrick. All right. Let's show the bets, Josh. So this is our best bet segment. It's brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. A lot of red. The one shining light KP, Scottie Scheffler to finish inside the top 5 at -140. Winner. Congratulations.
Yeah, barely. The Wyndham Clark thing let me down. Burns was what we thought he was, and Wyndham just played terrible.
Yeah, that was weird. Burns really did struggle, which no surprise there. But Wyndham Clark goes 76, 73, 71, 70. I guess he got better throughout the week, but it was not good.
I needed like 6 rounds. I needed a 6-round event.
Yeah, he would have gotten there. He would have gotten there eventually. Now, we do get a little more green on the best bets because look at this. This is like 4 weeks in a row or 5 out of 6 or something. Patrick's positivity parlay has come through. He had Victor Hovland and Justin Thomas to finish inside the top 10. Cash it +102 for both of those things. Victor goes out and fires a 63 low round of the tournament to get it done, Patrick, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what order they come in.
You love to see it. Josh had to text me. He goes, your bet actually hit. I was under the assumption. I looked in the rundown early. It was in red already. It was an early call.
Wow. An early call.
a hanging Chad situation since we're talking about Florida so much. But yeah, I mean, we're hot. We passed you, Rick, in terms of net profit. I think return is next. And
you crack me up.
And yeah, great.
Well done. Well,
I love that it was +102, not +100.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm an honest man.
I love that it was a 63 for solo 10th.
Yeah.
63 for solo 10th in a 20-man field. He got it done.
He knew what he was playing for. He knew.
Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure. We covered a lot. I apologize. We meant to get to a pair of LIV boys duoing, Joaquin Neiman winning, Dean Burmeister winning. Didn't happen. We'll get to it at some point. Good on those guys. Hat tip. Congratulations. Golf rolls on. Big thanks to producer Josh. Does all the hard work behind the scenes. Greg DuCharme available on Twitter at @TheRealGFD. Patrick McDonald at Amateur Status. Kyle Porter at Kyle Porter CBS. And you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.